YouTube, this is Mad Movie Mark on the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1948 film, noir, crime, drama, British spectacular, The Fallen Idol.
Is that all you've got?
Hey, I'm giving it all I got here, guys. I am reviewing every movie that has a 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll give them all a score of 1 to 10. After I review them all, I will rank them from worst to best. I started in the 1920 silent movie era, and now I'm at 1948 with The Fallen Idol. This movie was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Director for Kill Reed, Best Writing Screenplay. It won the second ever BAFTA Award for Best British Film. It stars Ralph Richardson as Baines, Michele Morgan as Julie, Sonia Dresdel as Mrs. Baines, and Bobby Henry as Phillipe. This movie, like I said, has a 100% fresh rating from the critics and 88% fresh rating from the audience. When we are first introduced into this movie, we are introduced to a boy named Phillipe, also his family's butler, Baines, and Baines' wife, Mrs. Baines, who is also I guess, a maid or a butler, butless as well. We are told that Phillipe's dad, who is an ambassador to, I believe, France, has left his home. He has gone to pick up his wife, who has been in the hospital for a few months. So while he's away, Mr. and Mrs. Baines are watching the boy. Now, Mr. Baines is like the fun, the fun parent. Not really parent, but he's the fun parent. He is the one who lets kind of Phillipe get away with things. They play together. They have fun together. He tells Phillipe just magnificent, marvelous stories of when he went to Africa. And, he's kind of like the best friend of Phillipe. He is Phillipe's best friend.
What have we got for chop?
Chop?
You said that was what food was called in Africa.
Oh, yes, of course. Chop.
Tell me more about Africa.
Another time.
Mrs. Baines, however, is kind of a hard, willed, by the book. You're not going to play when it's not that time. You're going to eat all your food. You're going to do all your homework. You're going to go to bed early. You're going to do everything by the book, basically, is how she is. So Mr. and Mrs. Baines are basically a good cop, bad cop scenario. And, of course, this movie is told through the eyes of a child. So he idolizes Mr. Baines. Mr. Baines is his best friend.
I don't want any.
Last Phillipe, do as you're told and eat it up. Go along.
Why don't you let Baines take me for a walk?
Because I say so.
I hate you.
So the movie opens up. Phillipe wanders into Mr. Baines cleaning up the dining room table, and Mr. Baines says, "Oh, you want to have a bit of work? Let's get some work done. Let's talk. Let's have some fun." Mr. Baines tells him a story about when he went to Africa, and they're having a good time. Mr. Baines then decides he needs to leave for a little while, so he goes off on his own. And Phillipe wants to find Mr. Baines because he still wants to play. He still wants to have fun. He wasn't done yet, so he goes off to find Mr. Baines. He first tries a bar. Now, this is for me, it's a very weird scene because Phillipe goes into the bar and he yells, "Baines!" Sort of like that kid from Shane, where all he does is say Shane all the movie. But he says Baines, and then the bartender says, "Oh, he hasn't been in here yet today, Sonny." And then Phillipe still walks into the bar, does this really weird bit of acting that I don't understand. And then the bartender says, "Oh, he hasn't come in here today." So basically, he repeats himself. Now, I told this part of the movie, it's not really that important, but because this kind of introduces the acting choices that Philip Henry, I know he's young, but he makes some bizarre acting choices, and this is one of the most bizarre, where I'm going to play the clip here.
Mustn't come in here, Sonny.
Isn't Mr. Baines here?
No, hasn't been in here yet.
I don't understand if he is out of breath because he was running to find Mr. Baines, if he's trying to act like he's drunk because he's going to a bar, or if he's just a weird child who is socially awkward. Either of these could be correct. But this part of the movie, like it's one of the opening scenes of the movie, for me really set the pace for how I felt about Phillipe and his acting abilities, and why I'm not sure why they chose him for this part. Anyway, so he learns that he's not there, and then he goes off to like this tea room, and he sees Baines is having tea with this woman. Baines is very taken aback by Phillipe coming in, and he says, "Oh, are you alone? Did someone come with you?" And Phillipe says, No, I'm alone. And then Baines kind of settles down, and he says, "Oh, this is my niece. This is my niece, Julie." and Philip and Julie start talking, and they hit it off pretty easily because, you know, any friend of Baines is a friend of mine, according to what I think Philip would say. So as Philip is off playing with things and doing weird, awkward things like Philip would do, Mr. Baines and Julie are talking, and we can plainly see that they are not related, that they are in a dating type relationship. And Julie is planning on leaving because she doesn't like the situation. She's dating a married man. She wants to see a future here, but she can't because he won't leave his wife. So she's decided she's going to hightail it out. Mr. Baines hates this idea. We can kind of tell in the beginning of the movie based on how they depict Mrs. Baines, and kind of, you know, she's a bit prudish. He believes that he's in a relationship that is not a loving relationship, and that she, you know, she doesn't have any fun. She's just cooped up in the house, and you know and he wants excitement in his life, so he decides the best option is to cheat on his wife. So he says, "No, like don't leave. I'm gonna break up with her. I promise." So she says, "Okay."
Remember.
For 7 months, ever since she came to the embassy, seeing her every day.
I'm not speaking because of people looking on. Like this.
Give it time, Julie.
So when they get home, Mrs. Baines asks like Philip where he had gone, and Philip's, you know, he kind of brushes it off. Now, Mr. Baines and her have a discussion where he says that he doesn't think that they should see each other anymore or be together anymore. He says we both know that we've tried to make this work, and it's not working, and you know maybe we should go our separate ways. Now she doesn't like this idea because, you know, she's kind of, I think that she believes, she has some suspicion that he's cheating on her, but this kind of, you know, takes it into another gear.
Well, I've tried to make a go of it. And so have you. But we only make each other miserable. It's years now since there's been a day without some blessed row.
She questions Philip again, like, where were you guys? And he says, oh, you know, they were with me the whole time or whatever. And she says, they. So then she knows that they were hanging out with someone else, that Mr. Baines and Philip were hanging out with a third party. And she wants to know who it is, and she's very upset.
I will not put up with any more of your lies. You're becoming a regular little liar. And I won't put up with any more lies from you.
They gave it to me.
They? So that's it.
She decides that she is going to go stay with a family member for a day, and that she'll come back when, you know, when she's settled down, when she's cooled off, maybe when things have like settled a little bit and they can talk about this rationally. So she goes away, and then the mice at home play. So Mr. Baines decides he's going to take Philip on a trip to the zoo because he's been promising him that for a while. They go to the zoo. They have a really good time. Julie and Mr. Baines, you know, their relationship kind of solidifies here. They go back home, and Mr. Baines invites him into their house, and she's very reluctant because I believe it's because she feels reluctant entering the house of a married couple and being like on the, you know, being in the house where another woman belongs and she doesn't.
Couldn't we, Dahlia? We could easily make a table out of some of the cases. Don't you think?
Yes, of course.
It would be a picnic.
But she eventually is coaxed into the house. They have a good time. They play hide and seek.
There is, what is that called fish? Is it a rabbit or a rodent pudding?
You know, they play games. Mr. Baines receives a letter that says that from his wife that says she's going to stay a couple more days. So this is great for Mr. Baines. He's able to spend some time with Philip and spend some time with Julie. He gives the letter to Philip, and Philip makes like a paper airplane out of it. And, you know, everything's great. So they go to bed, and Philip is awoken by Mrs. Baines. She never went anywhere. She was hiding in the house the whole time. And, you know, since this is told from the story of a little child, and since he idolizes Mr. Baines, we kind of see Mrs. Baines as like this tyrant who will stop at nothing to get revenge. And she says, like, what room are they in? Where are they staying? And he doesn't say anything because, Mr. Baines is his best friend and he doesn't want anything bad to happen. So she, like, slaps him and then she goes to find Mr. Baines.
Where are they? Where are they? Don't lie to me. I know they're here. I have been here all the time.
And Phillipe runs out and he yells, Baines! And Mr. Baines comes out because he thinks that something is wrong. And then standing right there in front of him is his wife. And he's like, oh, this isn't good. So he goes and talks to his wife. And they have an argument with each other. And he basically, like, kind of dismisses anything that she says. And he says, let's not talk about this here. Let me go to the bedroom real quick. And let me do some stuff. And then I'll come back out. And we can have more of a rational conversation when we cool off.
In there! You've got the girl in there!
Now, wait a moment. Listen to me.
I don't want to hear any excuses. I know all about it. Let me get her. I'll tell her a thing or two.
Look, we've got to sit with each other downstairs. Don't make a scene.
Get out of my way!
So he goes to the bedroom, and then Mrs. Baines realizes that she can see the bedroom from a window in the house, but the window is this window that tilts. So, like, if you push it the wrong way, it can, like, knock you back. And she knows this, but she's so full with rage and disgust and heartache that she forgets about it. And she goes to the window and she pushes it the wrong way, and she ends up flying off the top of the stairs to the bottom of the stairs, where she dies. Mr. Baines runs out because he didn't know what happened, and he sees that his wife is dead. And then Phillipe, who was hiding, but he kind of saw what was going on, but not all the way. He's frightened by this, and he runs away. And as he's running through the streets, he's noticed by a cop. The cop stops him, and he says, you're quite young to be running through the streets by yourself at night. What's going on? But he doesn't say anything. Phillipe just doesn't say anything at all. The cop gets him back to the station where I believe there's, like, a prostitute there. I think that's what she's supposed to be. And Phillipe, like, will only warm up to this prostitute girl. He eventually says his name is Phillipe, but he won't give any more information than that. And then the police receive a phone call that there was an accident at the embassy. And they say, yeah, Baines is the point of contact at the embassy. And when Phillipe hears the word Baines, he says, Baines? And they say, do you know him, kid? And he's like, yeah, I live there. The ambassador's my father.
His name was Baines.
Yes, Baines, 48 Cheston Square.
Baines.
What's the matter? Do you know him?
I live there.
And then the prostitute girl goes, oh, I know your daddy. That was funny. So they go back to the house. Phillipe does his darndest to, make up evidence that Baines didn't do anything. Because what happens is they interview Baines, and the way he says things happened, it doesn't make sense. He says that she fell from the stairs to the bottom, and because that's where he thought she did, but the way her body landed, it doesn't make any sense unless she was pushed. He also says there was clearly, like, 3 people having dinner. There were 3 places set for dinner that night, but he doesn't want to implicate Julie in this, and he doesn't want to make it seem like he was cheating on his wife, because that gives him perfect motive to kill his wife. So he says, like, his wife was there all night, and that they had dinner, and then they went upstairs and had an argument, and she fell. He then goes upstairs. Baines goes upstairs, and he says, hey, Phillipe, where's that paper airplane you made with my wife saying she was going to be out of town for a couple days, because I really need that. I don't want anyone to see that, because that totally destroys my alibi. And then Phillipe forgets where he put it. But eventually the detective on the case finds it, and he says, so your wife was here, but what about this note?
You said just now that Mrs. Baines had supper with you downstairs. You did say that, didn't you? Yes. Well, then...
And Baines said, oh yeah, I forgot, my wife wasn't here. I just set those places at the table because that's what I'm used to doing. My wife is usually here. It was just out of habit. But eventually it comes out, he tells the truth that his wife wasn't there. He doesn't know who was there. He lapse of memory. But then Julie pipes up and says, you got to tell the truth. I was here, I'm not really his niece, I'm his girlfriend. And then at this point, Philip, like I said, Philip's trying his darndest to make up stories. Philip even says he was the one who killed Mrs. Baines.
He didn't do it.
Well, if he didn't do it, who did?
I did. My thumb marks downstairs on the banisters.
He's making up all these stories to make it look like he did it so that Mr. Baines doesn't get in trouble. But, eventually they're getting ready to arrest Mr. Baines because all the evidence points to him when they go up on top of the landing and they see that there are women's shoe prints there, and they kind of put two and two together that she was up there, she was looking through the window because it can see into the bedroom, and then she slipped and fell, and it actually was an accident.
Maybe force her way in.
Will you listen to me, please?
Came along here and
Let's put everything right.
upset the flower pot.
Please, sir. It's about the flower pot.
So they say, well, Mr. Baines, we're sorry to bother you. We do see that this was an accident. And we'll leave you to your day, to your grieving. And then Philip says, no, those are my shoe prints. I swear, I'm telling the truth now. It wasn't Mr. Baines. It wasn't Mrs. Baines who was up there. It was me. Technically that is the truth, but it's because from his perspective, he didn't know Mrs. Baines was up there. But anyway, that's the movie. What did I think of it? Now, Carol Reed is also the director of Odd Man Out. Odd Man Out was the first movie to ever win a BAFTA award for best British film, and this one won the second one, so he was 2 for 2. And I gave Odd Man Out a 10 out of 10. I have to be honest though, Odd Man Out was, to me, a much better film than this one. This one, the direction is great, the writing is terrific. The acting from Ralph Richardson, from Michele Morgan, and especially from Sonia Dresdel is fantastic. You really get the feeling that Sonia or Mrs. Baines, there's a lot of fear and anger and disgust, and you really feel it pouring out of her when she's trying to figure out where her husband is and what her husband's doing, and it's fantastic. The acting there is great. The story is fantastic. I love the script. The suspense leading up to the ending was great. I thought that they ended it kind of on the suspense was there, and then the final payoff wasn't, I felt like, for this movie. And also, I think that I didn't honestly care. So a part of me cared if he was convicted and if he was arrested for this, because he is clearly an innocent man who didn't kill his wife. But the other part of me was everything that happened in this movie was his fault, basically. He decided to have an extramarital affair with his wife. He hid it from her, and then when she was gone out of town, he brought the woman over, and this is all his fault. So he made his bed, he should lie in it if he ends up getting convicted, because this isn't the way a normal person should act, and this isn't the way anyone should act. If you are having a problem in your relationship where you feel like you're not loved anymore, or you feel like it's not going the way you want, the correct answer is not to cheat on your wife. And that's what he did. So I was actually okay with the ending if he was convicted and if he did go to jail, because, this is what he created. Now, this is seen through the eyes of the child, everything except kind of the end of the movie, because he didn't see what happened. But so if you're looking at it from the child's eyes, where Mr. Baines is really nice to you, and he's the one who shows love and affection to you, where Mrs. Baines doesn't, then I could see how she could be depicted as the villain of the movie. And if you remember that it's from his eyes, then sure, you see her as the villain of the movie. But in reality, she's not the villain of the movie. He is. So it's all about perception. This movie is all about how people perceive things and how things really are. In real life, he is a terrible person. He tells lies about he tells stories about where he's been. There is even a part where he throws in some racism about Africa, and he's cheating on his wife. All this stuff that makes him a bad person. But from the kid's eyes, he's fantastic, because he's the guy who plays with him. He's the guy who loves him. He's the guy who's always there with him. So I guess if that's what they were going for, then that's good. But I also see the movie through my eyes, and I see what's going on through my perspective of the movie. So in my perspective, he's a terrible person. In that case, the movie works. It really does, because you can see the movie through the child's perspective and your perspective. And when these three characters are on the film, everything is fantastic. Like I said, the story is great, the acting is great, the plotting is great, the pacing, everything is fantastic. It's just when Phillipe is on screen that things fall apart for me completely, because this kid is. So I read a few reviews. I wanted to see if I was wrong about this. And according to a lot of people, I am wrong about this, because I've read a lot of reviews where people like raved about his performance, about how great he was for being a child actor, about how he was poised, and about how he really brought something to this character. And I couldn't disagree more. I felt like he was only annoying the whole movie. He really, the way he reacts to things is odd, and I don't even know if a real child would act this way to things. Like when he goes into the bar, he acts very oddly. His voice to me is almost like nails on a chalkboard. To be honest, the worst acting for a child I've seen in a long time was when I saw the movie Shane. It really ruined the movie for me a lot. Even though that kid was nominated for Best Supporting Actor somehow at the Oscars, it really ruined the movie Shane for me, to where I will never go back and watch Shane again. I can't, because I love everything about Shane, but the child just destroys it for me. And this is the same with this movie. Like, it's hard to say if the child wasn't there, this movie would be great, because it's from the child's perspective. But he is just so bad that when he's on screen, I'm like, I'm rolling my eyes, and I'm like, can we just get this kid off the screen? Like, can we get someone else in this role? He's just so annoying. And the decisions he makes as a child, I know he's trying to help Baines, and he doesn't want Baines to get arrested, he doesn't want Baines to get caught, and Baines is his best friend, but it's just, I don't know, and I realize the more he tries to help Baines, the bigger of a hole he's digging for Baines. But I feel like you can do this as a child, you can get all these things done, you can fill this role, but actually be a good actor, and he's just not, he's terrible. So that really brought the movie down a peg for me. It really kind of, at the end, we don't see a lot of him. We see him, but he doesn't talk a lot, because the inspector finally says, like, can someone shut this boy up? Like, we're trying to run an investigation here. So he's not talking a lot, which is fantastic. That's why I think I like the back half of this movie the best, is because it's the real actors acting. It's the real, it's what should be happening is happening. But it's hard to say, just get rid of this. I don't even know why. I don't know why they decided that this kid would be perfect for this role, because he's just not, especially since how well casted Odd Man Out was. Every person in that movie was fantastic. I mean, individually, they were all great, and collectively even better. But in this movie, it falls so short with this child that it takes over the entire, it's a huge distraction from the great movie that's under it. Because in reality, this is a good movie, where it takes a person who's a terrible person, and you feel for that person. You feel like that's the one you want to succeed, even though he's a bad person. And the woman who actually did nothing wrong, really, she's just, this is the way she is. Is this not the person that he married? This is the way she is. This is how she is now. She is vilified, and you kind of, are rooting against her, even though she's the one who you should be rooting for. Does a great job. And if it was a different child actor, if they got someone who wasn't so annoying, this would definitely be at least like a 9.5 or a 10 movie, just because of how well everything else went and how great the movie was. But with their choice of this child as the actor, I can't give this anything higher than a 7.5. And that is my score for this movie, is a 7.5. 2 points off for the kid actor, who's just really, in my opinion, really bad. So thank you. I hope you enjoy me for my next review, when I review the John Wayne epic Western, Red River. Thank you. Have a good day.